Ladies and gentlemen, our final speaker for today is Congressman Dutch Ruppersberger. He serves as Ranking Member, U.S. House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Congressman Ruppersberger is serving his 6th term in the U.S. House of Representatives from Maryland's 2nd District. He was the first Democratic freshman appointed to the House Select Committee on Intelligence and was named Ranking Member of the Intelligence Committee in 2011. He previously served on the Appropriations and Government Reform Committees and on the House Armed Services Committee. Please join me in welcoming Congressman Ruppersberger.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Now, does anybody here know anything about cyber? Because I want to make sure that I might know as much as you do, or maybe I shouldn't speak to you. But no, I'm really happy to be here today, and I really feel very strongly about the issue of cyber. And what I'm going to do is really tell you how I got involved in cyber, where we are now, what we need to do in the future to deal with this threat. Let me put this over here. To begin with, before I was the ranking member of the Intelligence Committee in the, I think it was, I went on the committee in 2002, and I ended up going to becoming chairman of the Technical Tactical Committee on Intelligence. And I have NSA in my district, and the Technical Tactical Committee oversaw all of the SINGIT operations, space, that type thing. About 2005, I believe, Admiral McConnell. Anybody here know Admiral McConnell? And Admiral McConnell was at one time the director of NSA. He was the director of national intelligence. And Admiral McConnell came to me and he said, I'm going to tell you something that's very serious and I feel it's one of the biggest threats that we're dealing with. And he talked about cyber. And to be honest with you, I didn't really know a lot about it. Well, after about 3 hours of briefing, I said, oh my goodness, this is really serious. And not many people know about it. And at that time, I was also in the Appropriations Committee, and I went to a gentleman by the name of Jack Murtha, who was chairman of the committee. And I said, Jack, we have some serious issues about a threat to our country. We're going to have to deal with that threat, and we need to put money in the budget. And Jack said, well, you know, I specialize in airplanes and ships and that. He said, you go to Norm Dix. I don't know if you know who Norm Dix is from Washington State, and he just retired. So Norm and I started to get involved and work in the cyber realm. And it was very frustrating because the more we learned about it, and the more, General, how are you? The more we learned about the issue and how serious it was, we saw that nobody was really doing everything. There were a lot of people talking about it. There were all different groups, how concerned, but nobody was doing anything. And then the White House hired a individual who I respected, but he wasn't given any authority. So still, where are we? Well, how are we dealing with this threat? And the threats are getting worse. And finally, when I became ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, that means I'm the minority, and Mike Rogers became the chairman, we decided we had to do something about this threat because we just weren't going anywhere and there was nothing really occurring to protect our country. So for almost 2.5 years, we ended up, number one, bringing in all sorts of groups who would deal with this issue. We brought the White House in. We brought industry in. We brought anybody that we felt could be relevant. We brought ACLU in, the privacy groups, because we knew that if we were going to pass a bill in our limited jurisdiction in the Intelligence Committee, that we had to get a bill that was going to really deal with the problem, and also knowing that there were going to be many other bills and many other issues that were going to deal with the issue of cyber attacks. So what we did, we brought these groups in, and we finally came out with a bill. And the bill, it's kind of a record in Congress, only 27 pages. And we did read the bill, by the way. So then after that occurred and that we moved forward with the bill, all of a sudden we got a lot of pushback from the piracy groups. And their concern was that it was going to be the information that was being passed from the government to the industry that was going to violate privacy. But let me talk about what those issues are and explain what our bill does, because I think if you know where the bill is, you'll know where I'm coming. But before I do that, I do want to say this. We are getting attacked on a regular basis. I gave a speech at Microsoft last week, at Microsoft in Silicon Valley. I was talking to some of the people there who were in the audience. I know Visa was in the audience. They literally were being cyber attacked probably 3,000 hits a day. It goes on and on. I mean, the Chinese government literally is cyber attacking, our fertilizer companies, And what I mean by that, our fertilizer companies are in competition with China. So whatever China can get from us, they're going to get it. And it's very, very serious. I've been to China, and I talked to the kind of the counterpart of our NSA and let them know, well, let's work together, let's do things. And I said, well, if you want to work with the United States, you got to stop stealing, cyber attacking our business and taking money away. Well, oh, we don't do this, and that's not the case. Well, that's not true, as we know. And by the way, I can say that China is cyber attacking. It's not classified because we have information. But the attacks are just becoming more and more and more. We passed our bill, and then it went to the Senate and it died in the Senate. We're putting in our bill, we're doing what you call markup, and that markup will be tomorrow if I can get out of here over the snow. I have to speak, I think, at 8:30 tomorrow morning, and then have to go to Washington from there through Chicago. So I don't know if I'm going to get out of here or not. Any meteorologists in the room, by the way? No? Okay. All right, so then anyhow, we passed our bill, and a year later, what's changed? More cyber attacks. It has been estimated that Cyber Command, who's really in charge of protecting the military network and the intelligence network, has estimated that we have had at least $400 billion, not million, dollars stolen from the United States businesses. And as I pointed out, you even have fertilizer companies that are being attacked and on a regular basis. And this is just getting more serious and serious. But what really worries me is that a destructive attack, a country like Iran, who exports terrorism, and they're very serious. It's been reported. Again, I have to say it's been reported. I know, but I can't say other than it's classified. You know how you have to deal with that issue. But it's been reported that Iran is probing us right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if we don't do something somehow that they're going to at least attempt, a destructive attack with a bank or Wall Street or something to that effect. And these threats are just more and more. When your newspapers, when the New York Times, when Washington Post, Wall Street Journal are attacked, that's very serious. And the attack on New York Times was to try to find out what information or who their sources were, so they could find out who they were in their country. I mean, these are the type of things that are occurring. And that's very, very serious also. And the destructive attack I talked about has already occurred with Iran and Aramco. Does anybody know, do you all know Aramco? 30,000 computers were shut down. That's a destructive attack. And you talk about a threat to our satellites. I mean, we know how important our satellite industry is. We know that what we do every day, whether it's business, whether it's your home, whatever you do, what we do in intelligence and all the things that they do with satellites. And, they might not, some of these countries or the bad guys might not be able to take out a satellite with a missile, but they can sure wreak havoc in a cyber attack. So, these issues are so important that we're trying to get something done to pass the bill. One of the biggest problems we have, though, by the way, is that the average person doesn't even know what cyber's about. If you go out in the street here, anywhere, any city, anywhere, you know what cyber's about? Well, I'm not sure. And we need to educate our country. And what I'm worried about is that we're going to have a destructive attack before, and it could very easily happen. And then we'll be able to get whatever we want passed, I'm sure, like 9/11. And we want to deal with that earlier. Okay, well, let me get to the bill and what our bill does. The first thing, it's a sharing bill. And the way it works, and if you know this, I'm going to tell you anyhow, I'm sure most of you know, 80% of our network in the United States is controlled by providers. There are about 10 providers, AT&T, Verizon, Comcast. So they really control 80%. So in order for us to have an effective defense against cyber attacks, government and the intelligence community must work with the private sector. And what really our bill, to begin, our part of our bill, is that there's a 1947 law that was passed that's saying you cannot pass or communicate classified information. So right now, as an example, if our intelligence community, who's really good at what they do, if our intelligence community has information of an attack, you can't really go to the providers who represent you and me and our business and everything else to try to work with them and help that out. Now, there are some exceptions there, but basically, you're not allowed to do that legally. And so what our bill does is to set up a system of information sharing. Now, the privacy groups, and look, everybody has a point of view. I don't agree with their point of view, but they have a point of view, and we have to deal with it. And because our bill did not pass the Senate, and because the administration has some issues with our bill, Chairman Rogers, just as of today, have been communicating with the Senate and with the White House in trying to deal with their issues about the issue of privacy. I believe our bill, the way it passed, deals with the issue of privacy. But if there's a perception that it does not, then we're going to try to work with it. So we're marking up our bill tomorrow, again, if I get out of here. And then we're going to go on the floor a week from now to try to get our bill passed. Now, what the big problem is, one of the big problems is what we call minimization, which means it's not about us giving information to the providers, but it's about the providers then saying, 911, we need your help, Intelligence Committee, we need your help, government. And the privacy groups are concerned that when the information is passed about the attack on their customers, that personal information is being passed. It is not. It's zeros and ones. But there's a perception that it has been passed, personal information. So what we're going to do is that we're going to put an amendment in the bill that says that the government must minimize, which means they must, when this information, the zeros and ones, comes over, if there is a slippage and some personal information comes over, and that's not what happens even now, that we're going to have it in our bill that there has to be mandatory minimization, that the government has to minimize everything to make there can be no personal information, and if it's there, it's got to be rejected. And that's part of what we're negotiating right now. We have checks and balances in the bill. We have the different groups that will be looking at the bill, how it's working. We have what they call the Inspector General. Every area, the Intelligence Inspector General will not only review the bill and how it's operating, but also make a report every year so that we have the check and balances that are there. So we're trying to deal with this issue of minimization, and we're just not sure whether or not we can get what we need for the votes. I'm sure we'll get the votes in the House, but what's going to happen with the Senate? And by the way, Senator Feinstein is the chairman of the Intelligence Committee in the Senate. Saxby-Chambliss is the minority in the Senate. And Chairman Rogers and I realize that we can pass our bills all day long in the House. If we don't get the Senate and we don't get the President, there's not going to be a bill, which would be, in my opinion, catastrophic in the end if we don't deal with something. Right now, I believe that Congress is standing in the way of protecting all of us and protecting us from these cyber attacks. The area now, another area that we're focusing on in the bill is again, this cooperation. But we also have to educate people. And again, I said there are people that are out here, most of our country, do not understand what cyber's about. I happen to be a Ravens fan. Guess who won the Super Bowl this year? Okay. Oh, good. Okay, I didn't see you wearing purple, but I'm glad to see there's a Ravens fan. But remember what happens to those of you that watch the Super Bowl, that the lights went out. And I was hoping that was a cyber attack. And I really did, because, people might not understand it, but they understand their football. And what happened, I said that to a reporter the next day in Washington, a headline, Ruppersberger wanted the lights out to be a cyber attack. I mean, that's the way it is. But that is important that we do educate. We also have to talk about the training people to work in the cyber area. And I think you've had prior panel was talking about it. But one of the areas that we have just in my area, my district is a 95 corridor from what we call Fort Meade to Haverty Grace. I have NSA in my district, Fort Meade, and I have Aberdeen, which is the training center for the Army. A lot of technology that is going on there. We have over 1,000 open jobs in that area. And yet we have a problem, not that a lot of people might not want to work in cyber. What the real problem is the issue of people that aren't cleared. And it might take a year to get cleared. And so what we're trying to do, and I'm going to be working with groups, working with academia, working with the business sector, to come together, let the business sector know academia what they would like to teach in their curriculum. And another thing that we want to try to do is to try to see if we can start an intern program with these businesses, and then when they start and they're in college taking the courses to work in this area, the field, to be a cyber warrior, we call it. If we can do that, then they will know right away if we start the background check on people that are classified, when they graduate from college, they can go right to work in this area. And that's really an important issue too. We sometimes forget we have to train people, and what made this country, one of the things that made it so great was education. So we really have to focus in that arena. And by the way, why I'm talking about education, we have a serious, in my opinion, or a problem, I won't say serious because who knows how that's interpreted, with people working in space. And that is that's a problem we have to deal with. Because in the old days when we went to the moon, everyone in the country was excited, they knew what was going on, everybody knew the name of the astronauts. Now, the younger generation or people know the name of NFL quarterbacks, but not who our astronauts are. And we have to reinvigorate this issue of space and educate the public how important space is. Because, we're having a lot of issues about cuts in Washington right now. And we've got to resolve that. And if people's constituents or voting members of Congress, if their constituents don't know how relevant and important space is, then they're not going to know, and they're easy cuts. And so it's really important that even not only in cyber, but that in space generally, we have to make sure that we get younger generation to look at space. China and Russia are clearly, especially China, I mean, they're communist countries. They can order their 4.0 students to go in space, whether they want to go or not. We can't. So we want to stay above the curve. If we want to still be the most dominant country in the world, and we still are, but we have some work to do, we clearly need to do that. Now, I'm going to probably stop now and open up for questions, if that's what you want. Who's running the show here? I mean, you. Oh, okay. I can go on and talk about cyber for a long time. We hope this bill, again, is going to be passed. We think it is. The president has an order, an executive order that deals with Homeland Security and deals with infrastructure, especially critical infrastructure. And I think that's a positive thing because our bill, we don't have jurisdiction in our committee for that anyhow, as far as critical infrastructure is concerned. But it was another issue that how the bill, and that's what happened in the Senate. The bill was so comprehensive. There was so much that they were trying to accomplish, and they couldn't get votes to deal with it. So what the president's executive order deals with critical infrastructure, and probably the weakest part of our critical infrastructure is our energy areas, is our water areas like that. Our banks and the business community, they're pretty sophisticated in that area, but we need a lot of work. And because cyber is such an important issue, and what we're going to deal with, you're going to have certifications. And suppose you have one electric company in Colorado that says we don't want to do this, and then you have another that does. Your weakest link will always be there. So we need to make sure that we do deal in the area of the critical infrastructure. So if you hear about our bill, it's called CISPA. Hopefully we're going to get it out of our committee tomorrow. If I can get out of here again, I keep saying that, but maybe a little snow anxiety. Right? What's today's date? April what? 7th? 8th? It's still snowing. But is it global warming or not? Tell me. What do we think? Who knows? I don't want to get into that at all. The other thing is, can I open the questions? Do we have time? Or?
Yes.
Oh, okay, fine. Also, let me see. Is there another member of Congress here? Patrick, yeah. And he is on the Homeland Security Cyber Committee. And they have a lot of work to do there, too. And hopefully we get our bill passed, and they'll be working with legislation, and we can start really dealing with the issue of cyber. But, yeah, the issue is teamwork. And I do want to say this about Chairman Rogers. Chairman Rogers and I have a bipartisan relationship and a committee. One of the few in Congress, unfortunately. I tell the story. Chairman Rogers was a former FBI agent. I was a former investigative prosecutor. And all good FBI agents must listen to their prosecutor, even if we're in the minority. Okay, so, and I remind him of that. In fact, we just had a press conference before I came here about trying to promote our cyber bill. And one of the reasons we were able to get our bill passed is because we work together as a team. We trust each other. It's trust in relationships. We need a lot more of that. But the stakes are so high in what we do, that has to be our theme, and it's our motto. Really, the hardest part was to get our two staffs to work together. But now they're all working together as a team, because for 7 years in this committee, before we took over, we couldn't get a bill passed. And if you don't get a bill passed, you're not doing what you're supposed to do in our committee, is oversee all of the intel agencies, CIA, NSA, military, all those committees. But now we're working together, and we're also working with the Senate. And I said before, if we can pass bills all day long, but if the Senate doesn't pass a bill and then the president doesn't sign it, it's not law. So Chairman Feinstein, Chambliss, Mike Rogers and I, we work together in a bipartisan way, and hopefully that will help us. Now, any questions?
We have some questions right here from the audience.
In the audience?
Right on my piece of paper, sorry.
What's that?
They've already come in. I'm going to read them off to you.
Okay, fine.
So the first question from the audience is, what is the best way to go about protecting ourselves from cyber attacks from countries like Iran?
Number one, pass our bill. And I really mean that, because then we're working as a team, the government in partnership with the private sector, to work together and to deal with the issue. I think if we can pull this together and working together, because 80% of the network is controlled by industry. That has to be. You can't do it. We can't protect the United States of America unless that happens. And right now, we don't have it. And I would say right now, we're as good as anybody. I'm not going to get into why or how as far as the cyber, but we don't have the ability to right now do everything that we can. I'll give you an example. Remember Hurricane Sandy, how serious and terrible that was? Well, suppose you were a meteorologist and you knew Sandy was coming up the East Coast and you couldn't warn anybody. That's how I feel. That's how some of us who've been around working on this issue a lot. And that's why I feel so strongly that our bill is going to allow that to happen. And once we work together, and once the NSA or the Intelligence Committee can use their expertise and their ability and what they've seen, we can make a difference. And again, the sad thing about it is that Iran is not that sophisticated compared to some. Well, China is very aggressive, but you have other countries that have a lot of expertise in this area. Russia, Israel, France, other areas. So that's how I would pass the bill, and I think we can then do what we need to do. We also need to hold China accountable too. I know the question was about Iran, and we have to somehow let them know you can't keep doing this to us, and if you do, there are going to be consequences. Now I know probably that's a little. I'm not in the State Department, so I'm not as don't have to be. I don't know. I don't have to. I don't want to say this. I don't have to be worried about all the diplomacy. In fact, Chairman Rogers and I right now are being very aggressive with China about China is attacking us. We did a report, classified report on Huawei. You know what Huawei is. You might have somebody here from Huawei. I don't know. And what we did, I met with the founder of Huawei in China. And he said, well, we're global. How can you stop us in the United States? I said, I can tell you how we can stop it. If you answer the questions that we've asked you and let us know what you're going to do, and you haven't answered the questions. But more importantly, you tell your country to stop cyber attacking our businesses, or we're not going to be able to work together. And we came out with a report basically saying we couldn't stop them on our Intelligence Committee, but we're warning businesses in the United States of America that if you have Huawei, we're very worried about the impact and association between Huawei and their government and the military. And you remember here the Mandia report? Well, that was the best thing that ever happened for those of us that are trying to promote Huawei to the citizens and everyone else. Because what they did, they had 141 of their clients who were cyber attacked. They did an investigation and literally showed where the attacks were coming from in China, and they showed a relationship between the people who were doing the attack and the Chinese government. And that's why Chairman Rogers and I said, and I made 60 Minutes, why that your communist China can order people in their country to do things. Suppose the Chinese government came and said, we want to get information from this company, and this company is using Huawei technology, so we could be exposed. Now, that's not saying you don't have to buy Huawei, but the bottom line, go in with your eyes open. But what we need to say to China, and I'm going to say that next time I meet with some of their people, China, you're big boys. You're a very powerful country. You're going to be a world leader for a long time. Act like an adult. You have got to stop cyber attacking, not in the United States of America, but all over the world. And because we need you, China, to help us put together a global strategy on this cyber attacks. Because a lot of our companies everywhere, we're global. And we can start protecting ourselves, but as far as the whole world, it's a serious issue, and we need to have certain standards that every country, whether you're small or large, and there's got to be some type of sanctions or whatever that we deal with. Okay, another question? How many did I have?
What's it, sir?
How many questions?
We have 2 more.
Oh, okay. That's easy.
The next one is, what can we do to increase communication between the private sector and government?
Pass our bill. information sharing. It's where it is. And I really mean that. I mean, pass our bill, and that's where we need to go, because we've had what we call a DIP pilot. We had a pilot program where we started, and where we realized that the information sharing is where we need to go, and working together. And the more we work together, and by the way, it's just not that our government is very sophisticated, but it's just not more. It's just the relationships that need to be working together to deal with the internet, and how serious that internet and what's happening. But I mean, if I answer the question, it was just like I gave a long answer to the last one. It's the same thing. And one of the things so unique about our country, and why we're so good, and we've been good for a long time, is the fact that we not only have government, and we have some great people in space and NSA, cyber, we have a lot of great people, but the fact that we have a partnership and we work together with industry. And that makes us stronger, where industry can do things the government can't. They can do a lot of research and development. And that's what makes us the strongest country in the world. It has to be that way. So it's just the relationships together, coming together, and that's all that we can really do. Pass our bill. CISPA. Okay. Another one?
The last question. Could you say a little more about what the bill will allow providers to do?
Basically, it has to be voluntary. One of the biggest issues when we were putting together the bill is that industry is not going to subject themselves to lawsuits. They're not going to subject themselves. Now, and they will only come to the table, if we can show that we need to protect them. Now, on the Republican side, they wanted to give total immunity, and I said, I represent my caucus too, and I said we need some type of accountability. I know we need to give. We need to protect from lawsuits. There's no question. We don't want a litigious society as it relates to cyber, and it won't work. So Mike Rogers and I had a lot of negotiation, and we came up with a phrase: as long as business deals in good faith, that's the standard, good faith, that they will not be subjected to those laws. Well, they can have a lawsuit filed. You can always do that, but that's the standard. And that was something that it took a lot of time for us to work it out, but we finally worked that out. The other issues with respect to the business is that you call, in our country, if you're involved, somebody's robbing your house, you call 911. Well, when the cops are coming, they're not looking to see personal information. They're saying, what's the description, who was there, and how it happens. And that's the same thing we have. I give an example. If, when we have anthrax, and you have a letter and that could have anthrax, when we're trying to deal with that, we don't care what the letter says. We care about dealing with the subject matter of anthrax. It's the same thing that we're trying to do with the cyber bill. So then once we get our bill passed, and then business has the right, they're not worried about suit, because the incentive for business to get involved is that they're not going to be sued. And the other issue is this issue I talked about with minimization, and that basically says, look, we're not in the business of minimizing. The Intelligence Committee does, the government does. And by the way, our bill didn't have any of this about minimization, and now we're going to make it mandatory. I told you that before. We're going to make it mandatory on the issue of government minimization. And so that's another issue that hopefully we're going to deal with. But once we get the bill passed and we can work together, and when the companies say, hey, 911, we need your help. Well, I keep saying 911, but they're calling because you're being cyber attacked. That's what 911 is about. So once the government can get together, we can really deal with it, find out where it's from, and then protect us. And there are ways to protect. And also, every probably 8 months, technology is always moving ahead. And one of the things we didn't want to do in our bill is that we did not want to discourage innovation. That's what has made America great. So we keep, as far as that is concerned, we don't talk about it, because technology can change 8 months. We're not going to try to deter the innovation, and that's a very important part of the bill too. So once we come together, I think we're going to be in a really good position to make a difference. But that'll keep changing and evolving. And that's why I talked about education, STEM education, those type of things. China is now starting in about the 5th grade and getting a lot of their people in education to go into space or to go into cyber. One of the things I will say, people think we're in trouble here. We're not in trouble. We just need to get better. And need to ramp up a little bit in certain areas. But our colleges and universities are still as better than China. Now, China's starting to get better, but we have to make sure that we maintain and move ahead in the area of innovation. I think we've got to start dealing, at least in the 5th or 6th grade, get kids involved in the STEM area and get them to focus on that area too. And I know this isn't really about the subject matter, but another area that's extremely important is immigration. And I've had conversations with Bill Gates, other people about this, is that right now we have people from all over the world coming to our universities. Harvard, Yale, MIT, wherever you went to school, but they're coming to this country. But under our immigration laws, they have to leave. Well, most of the people that are coming in the STEM area, they want to come here because they want that education, but they want to continue their education, their research and development, and they want to be United States citizens. It's still the best country in the world to be here. But what they have to do, they have to leave after they graduate. And that is hurting us as a country. We don't have exclusivity on brains. We have smart people, but we need these people to stay here. And if you look at our space program, look at how when the Germans came here, I mean, after World War II, and how much to this day it's helped our space program. So, that's another area that we really have to focus on, is to make sure that we change the laws so people who come to our universities and they want to stay here, there's a path for American citizenship. And we also want to recruit them. Well, because they have to go home, China and Russia are recruiting these people. Come to our country. We'll give you this. We'll give you that. And that's a serious issue also. So we're going to try to deal with that. That's not part of our bill, by the way, but I think it's something we all have to deal with and make sure that we resolve that issue too. Okay, is that it? Okay, well, it's good to talk, and I'm glad we could be here. I know we're here on space, and I want to thank the Space Foundation for pulling people here together. I've seen, and before I was in Congress, I was what they call an executive, county executive, and these people, unfortunately, the media sometimes thinks we're just coming here to have fun. I've found that networking and relationships and resolving issues in these type of conferences and learning from other people are extremely important. I know today I've had meetings with different people, and we might be able to resolve some areas that are controversial or about legislation or where we're going to go in space or cyber or other areas. So I'm really glad you all continue to come. Just pray that I can get out of here tomorrow, because I have votes tomorrow night at 6:30, and we got our bill tomorrow. So I somehow have to get out. So I'm not a snow sissy, but I'm just worried about the airplanes taking off, and that's what we need to do. So take care. And by the way, you're going to get me tomorrow morning at 8:30. That's going to be more of a space speech, and I look forward to seeing you all. And I think I gave a speech about 2 years ago. But I just can't say how much I appreciate the foundation doing this every year. Brendan, good job wherever you are, coordinating. Good job in coordinating all of this. And I really look forward when I can come here, when my schedule allows that, to communicate with you. Take care.